I never expected that a Tuesday afternoon trip to the hardware store would lead me here, sitting on Marcus's couch while his 8-year-old daughter Emma asks him why the nice man from next door keeps having dinner with them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because this story, this beautiful, terrifying, unexpected story, started 6 months ago when I moved into the apartment next to theirs. I was 32, freshly divorced from a marriage that had been doomed from the start, though I couldn't admit why until I was sitting in my therapist's office at 29, finally saying the words out loud. I'm gay. 3 years later, I was still learning what that meant for me, still figuring out how to exist in the world as my authentic self. The apartment was supposed to be a fresh start, a place where I could just be me without the weight of expectations or explanations. The first time I saw Marcus, he was struggling with grocery bags and a very energetic little girl who was singing something about unicorns at the top of her lungs. He had this warm, brown skin that seemed to glow in the hallway's fluorescent lighting, close-cropped hair with just a touch of gray at the temples, and the kind of smile that makes you forget whatever you were thinking about. He was wearing a faded college t-shirt and jeans, and there was a smudge of what looked like finger paint on his shoulder. I held the door open for them, and he thanked me with a voice that was deep and genuine. Emma, I would later learn her name, looked up at me with curious brown eyes and announced that they were making spaghetti for dinner. And did I like spaghetti? Marcus laughed, apologized for his daughter's lack of boundaries, and introduced himself. His handshake was firm and warm, and I held on maybe a second too long. That night, I could hear them through the walls, not intrusively, just the gentle sounds of life happening. Emma's laughter, Marcus's patient voice reading a bedtime story, the quiet settling of a home where people loved each other. I sat in my mostly empty apartment, surrounded by boxes I hadn't unpacked, and felt a loneliness so profound it physically hurt. The second time I saw Marcus was at the building's shared laundry room. It was late, almost 10, and I'd been putting off laundry for weeks. He was folding tiny clothes, girls' clothes with cartoon characters and sparkles, and he looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his movements had the mechanical quality of someone running on empty. We made small talk while our clothes tumbled in adjacent machines. He told me he was a graphic designer who worked from home, that Emma's mother had passed away 3 years ago from cancer, that some days he felt like he was barely keeping his head above water, but Emma's smile made everything worth it. I told him I was a freelance writer, that I was starting over, that I understood about barely keeping your head above water. He asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime, just as neighbors, and I said yes, probably too quickly. We exchanged numbers, and when I went back to my apartment that night, I stared at his contact information on my phone like a teenager with their first crush. I was in trouble, I realized. Deep trouble. Our coffee date happened on a Saturday morning at a place 2 blocks from our building. Emma was with Marcus's mother for the day, and he looked different somehow, more relaxed but also more vulnerable without his daughter as a buffer. We talked for 3 hours, our coffee growing cold as we shared stories about our lives, our fears, our dreams. He told me about meeting his wife in college, about the devastating grief of losing her, about learning to be both mother and father to a little girl who asked questions he didn't always know how to answer. I told him about my marriage, about the years I spent trying to be something I wasn't, about the relief and terror of finally accepting myself. I watched his face carefully when I said I was gay, looking for any sign of judgment or discomfort. Instead, he just nodded thoughtfully and said that it took real courage to live authentically, that he admired people who had the strength to be honest about who they were. Something shifted between us that day, though neither of us acknowledged it. When we walked back to our building, our hands brushed against each other, and I felt electricity run up my arm. He pulled away quickly, apologizing, and I said it was fine, no problem, even though my heart was racing. The friendship that developed over the next few months was the most intense thing I'd ever experienced. We fell into an easy rhythm, seeing each other several times a week. Sometimes it was planned, coffee or a meal. Other times it was spontaneous, running into each other in the hallway or at the corner store. Emma started recognizing me, greeting me with enthusiastic waves and updates about her day at school. Marcus started asking me for advice about things, small things at first. What did I think about a design project he was working on? Did I know any good books for 8-year-olds who loved adventure stories? Then, bigger things. How did I deal with loneliness? Did I ever feel like I was failing at life even when I was doing everything right? I found myself looking for excuses to see him. I'd take my laptop to the coffee shop I knew he liked, hoping to run into him. I'd time my trips to the mailbox for when I thought he might be coming home with Emma from school. I was falling for him, hard and fast, and I had no idea if he felt anything beyond friendship for me. The first time he invited me for dinner was casual, almost an afterthought. Emma had been asking about me, he said, wondering why the nice neighbor didn't come over anymore. It had been almost a week since we'd seen each other, the longest gap since we'd become friends, and I'd been going crazy, wondering if I'd done something wrong. Dinner was spaghetti, Emma's favorite, and she talked nonstop about her school play and her best friend Madison and a boy named Tyler who put a frog in the teacher's desk. Marcus and I kept catching each other's eyes across the table, sharing silent smiles at Emma's enthusiasm. It felt domestic and comfortable and absolutely terrifying because I wanted it so badly. After Emma went to bed, Marcus and I sat on his couch with glasses of wine, talking in low voices. He told me that being a single parent was the hardest thing he'd ever done, that sometimes he felt guilty for wanting something for himself, for wanting adult conversation and connection beyond playdates and parent-teacher conferences. I told him he deserved happiness, that wanting things for himself didn't make him selfish. His hand was on the couch between us, and I wanted so badly to reach out and take it. Instead, I finished my wine and said I should probably go. He walked me to the door, and when we said goodnight, there was a moment where we just stood there, looking at each other, and I swear something passed between us. But then he stepped back, thanked me for coming, and I went back to my apartment feeling like I'd missed some crucial opportunity. The dinners became a regular thing, once or twice a week. Emma started setting a place for me automatically, chattering about her day while Marcus cooked and I helped, moving around his kitchen like I belonged there. I learned that Emma loved dinosaurs and hated Brussels sprouts, that she was scared of thunderstorms but pretended she wasn't, that she still slept with a stuffed elephant her mother had given her. Marcus and I developed our own language, a shorthand of looks and small gestures. I knew when he was stressed by the way he rubbed the back of his neck. He could tell when I was anxious by how I tapped my fingers against my leg. We finished each other's sentences and laughed at jokes no one else would understand. I was in love with him. Completely, utterly, hopelessly in love, and I had no idea what to do about it. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday, and I wasn't supposed to be there, but Marcus had texted me in a panic. Emma was sick, running a fever, and he'd been up all night with her. Could I possibly bring over some ginger ale and crackers from the store? His mother was out of town, and he didn't want to drag Emma out while she was feeling awful. I showed up with supplies and soup I'd picked up from the deli. Emma was curled up on the couch looking miserable, and Marcus looked haggard. I told him to go take a shower, that I'd stay with Emma. He hesitated, but I insisted, and finally he agreed. Emma and I watched cartoons together, and I brought her water when she asked for it, adjusted her blanket, felt her forehead the way my mother used to do with me. When Marcus came back, hair still damp from the shower, he stopped in the doorway and just looked at us. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read, something tender and sad and yearning all at once. Emma fell asleep around 8, and Marcus carried her to bed. When he came back, he sat down next to me on the couch, closer than usual, and said thank you. Not just for today, he said, but for everything. For being there, for caring about Emma, for being someone he could count on. I told him it wasn't something he needed to thank me for, that I cared about both of them. More than I probably should, I added, before I could stop myself. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and asked what I meant by that. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure he could hear it. I could have backed down, made a joke, changed the subject. Instead, I took a breath and told him the truth. I told him that I'd been falling for him since the day we met, that every moment we spent together made it worse and better at the same time. I told him I understood if he didn't feel the same way, that I valued his friendship too much to let this ruin it, but I couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel what I felt. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Marcus's face went through a series of expressions I couldn't interpret. Finally, he said my name, soft and careful, and told me he needed to be honest with me. He'd been married to a woman he loved, he said. He'd never questioned his sexuality before. But since meeting me, he'd been questioning everything. The way he looked forward to seeing me, the way his heart raced when I smiled at him, the way he found excuses to touch my arm or stand close to me. He'd been having dreams, he admitted, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, dreams about me that left him confused and excited and terrified. He had Emma to think about, he said. He couldn't just explore these feelings without considering how it would affect her. What if we tried this and it didn't work out? What if people judged him, judged her? What if he was just confused and ended up hurting me? I understood, I told him, even though my heart was breaking a little. I didn't want him to do anything he wasn't ready for. But I also told him that Emma deserved to see her father happy, that living authentically wasn't just important for us, but for the children who looked up to us. That love, real love, was worth the risk. He kissed me then, sudden and desperate and sweet. His hands cupped my face, and I could feel them trembling. It was everything I'd imagined, and nothing like I'd expected, tender and passionate and terrifying in its intensity. When we pulled apart, we were both breathing hard, and there were tears on his cheeks. We talked until 3 a.m. about what this meant, about how to move forward. Marcus wanted to take things slow, to figure out his feelings before involving Emma. I agreed, even though part of me wanted to rush headlong into whatever this was between us. The next few weeks were beautiful and complicated. We started dating in secret, stolen moments when Emma was at school or with her grandmother. Coffee dates that turned into long walks through the park, dinners at restaurants across town where we wouldn't run into anyone from the building. We held hands under tables and kissed in my apartment and talked about everything and nothing. Marcus was discovering himself, figuring out what it meant to be attracted to a man, to be falling in love with someone he'd never expected. I watched him come alive in ways that made my heart ache, saw him smile more freely, laugh more easily. But I could also see the fear in his eyes when he talked about Emma, about what telling her would mean. I fell deeper in love with him every day. The way he bit his lip when he was thinking, the way he hummed while he cooked, the way he looked at me like I was something precious and unexpected. We made love for the first time in my apartment on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and it was gentle and intense and absolutely perfect. Afterwards, lying tangled together in my bed, Marcus told me he loved me. I'd never heard 3 words that meant so much, but the secrecy was taking its toll. Emma started asking why I didn't come over as much anymore. Marcus's mother commented that he seemed distracted. We were building something real, but we were building it in the shadows, and that couldn't last forever. The decision to tell Emma came after we'd been together for 2 months. Marcus was ready, he said, because he couldn't imagine his life without me in it, and Emma was the most important part of his life. She deserved to know the truth. We planned it carefully, decided that I would start coming around more again first, reestablishing the friendship Emma remembered. Then Marcus would talk to her about how sometimes adults develop feelings for each other, about how love can look different than what she might expect, but it's still beautiful and real. So I started having dinner with them again, and Emma was thrilled. She showed me drawings she'd made, told me stories I'd missed, asked me to read her bedtime stories. Marcus and I were careful not to show any physical affection, but I caught Emma watching us sometimes with a thoughtful expression that made me nervous. Then came today. We were all in the living room, Emma playing with her dolls on the floor while Marcus and I sat on the couch, probably sitting closer than friends would. Emma suddenly looked up and asked, with the blunt honesty of children, why I kept coming over so much. Didn't I have my own family to eat dinner with? Marcus and I exchanged a look, and I could see him steeling himself. He asked Emma to come sit with us, and she did, looking between us with curious eyes. Marcus took a deep breath, and I reached over and squeezed his hand, just for a second, for courage. He told her that he wanted to talk to her about something important, about feelings and love and family. Emma listened with the serious attention she gave to things that mattered, her small face thoughtful. Marcus explained that sometimes people fall in love in unexpected ways, that love doesn't always look like it does in the movies or the books she reads. He told her that he had fallen in love with me, that I was more than just a friend, that I made him happy in a way he hadn't been happy in a long time. He asked her if she understood what he was saying. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she asked if that meant I was going to be like a daddy to her too. Marcus's breath caught, and I felt tears prick my eyes. He told her that was something we could figure out together, all three of us, if she was okay with it. Emma looked at me then, studying my face with an intensity that reminded me so much of her father. She asked if I loved her daddy. I told her yes, very much. She asked if I loved her too. I told her yes, absolutely. She was wonderful and smart and brave. She nodded, seeming satisfied, and then said, "Okay," just like that. "Okay." She asked if this meant I could come to her school play next week because she wanted me to see her be a tree. Marcus started laughing, this beautiful relieved sound, and pulled Emma into a hug. I joined them. The three of us tangled together on the couch and felt something settle in my chest, something that felt like home. Emma went back to playing after extracting promises that, yes, I would come to the play, and yes, we could have ice cream after. Marcus and I stayed on the couch, his hand finding mine, holding tight. He asked me if I was okay, if this was too much too fast. I told him I'd never been more okay in my life. This beautiful man and his incredible daughter, this life we were building together, it was everything I never knew I needed. Emma called out asking if I could stay for a sleepover, and Marcus and I both laughed. He told her that was something we'd have to talk about, that there were grown-up things to figure out first. "But maybe soon," he said, looking at me with eyes full of love and hope and promise. Maybe very soon. That night, after Emma finally went to bed, Marcus and I stood in his doorway saying goodnight. He kissed me softly and told me thank you for being patient, for loving them both, for being brave enough to tell him the truth all those weeks ago. I told him that loving them was the easiest thing I'd ever done. Walking back to my apartment, I realized that 6 months ago I'd moved in next door looking for a fresh start, for a place to figure out who I was. I never expected to find a family, to find love, to find home. But here I was, in love with a man who was learning to be brave, helping raise a little girl who accepted our love with the simple wisdom of children. Tomorrow, Emma has school, and Marcus has a work deadline, and I have an article due. We'll navigate the ordinary complications of life, figure out how to blend our worlds together, face whatever challenges come from loving openly and honestly. But tonight, I'm standing in my apartment, looking at the wall that separates me from them, and feeling nothing but gratitude. This isn't the story I thought I'd be living, but it's the one I needed. It's messy and beautiful and real, full of ordinary moments that feel extraordinary because we're living them together. Emma asked why I kept coming over, and Marcus finally told her the truth. I keep coming over because this is where I belong, where my heart lives, where love found me when I wasn't even looking. And that's the best kind of love story there is.